Okay, so why don't we start? Introduce yourself, your organization, and a few facts to find.
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Cathy Vigrass. I'm the head of Canada for Square. Thank you for having me here. I am responsible for growing our business in Canada and bringing new products and services to our Canadian sellers here in the market. If you're not familiar with Square, payments is obviously at the very core of what we do, but we offer a whole suite of hardware and software products and services designed to integrate together pretty seamlessly to make commerce easy for sellers of all shapes and sizes. From a fun facts perspective, not sure how fun it is, but we currently have hundreds of thousands of customers here in Canada and millions of customers around the world in the 5 markets that we operate. So we're helping people start, run, and grow their business all over the world.
Good morning. My name is André Lyver. I'm the Director of Engineering in Merchant Services at Shopify. Shopify is a leading cloud-based multi-channel commerce platform that enables small to medium-sized businesses to essentially set up, build, and manage their business or their stores online and sell in multi-channel, so online, point of sale, on marketplaces, and in social media. I am responsible for payments, so that includes Shopify Payments, which is our payment gateway, as well as our partnerships with the likes of Apple and Google for things like Apple Pay and Android Pay. And more recently, I took over Shopify Capital, so running the merchant cash advance solution there. I guess from a fun facts perspective, we have over 400,000 merchants in 175 countries. So we're focused on small to medium-sized entrepreneurs and building those entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs of today are larger merchants of tomorrow, and we've seen that consistently year over year. And one interesting fact I picked up from Paul's talk this morning and PayPal, where he mentioned that by the year 2020, 50% of online checkouts are going to be on a mobile device. Well, at Shopify, we're already at 58%. 58% of our online checkouts are on a mobile device, so that we're already there.
Wow. So. Great. All right.
Excellent. So I'm Mario D. Armas. I am a Senior Director for International Payments and for Financial Services at Walmart. A quick question, how many merchants are in the room? Raise your hand. Wow, okay. So I have the unenviable position of trying to represent one of the stakeholder groups, which is of all payments, which is the merchant community. It's one that we see quite frequently, because usually merchants are out busy doing their business. They're out busy selling stuff or running their hotels or running their gas stations, that sort of thing. So it's not very common that merchants have a lot of time to spend on building a payment strategy or building a payments acceptance strategy. So that's one of the reasons I'm actually a big fan of both Square and Shopify, because what they're doing is trying to simplify the business for a lot of these small merchants. But as those merchants grow into larger and larger merchants, payments become a really big expense for them, and it becomes one that's significant. For Walmart spends over $2 billion every year to accept electronic payments. $2 billion, with a B, every year to accept electronic payments around the world. So it's a big number for us. It's one that we are very focused on and trying to lower the cost of that.
Thank you.
You bet.
The next round is, how would you define, or what does the user experience mean for you? So what is the payment experience? What is the importance of that? What role does it play? And how do you define it? Go, we'll start with you again.
Yeah,
actually, you know what? Let's mix it up. Mario, why don't you go?
Sure. So I'd say it's changing. So as the marketplace is shifting more from bricks and mortar to digital payments, I think it's changing. If you look historically, as a merchant, we're looking for 3 things from a payments perspective. The payment system has to be safe and secure. It needs to be fast. We want the transaction speed at the queue to be quick, and we want it to be low cost. And the reason we want it to be low cost is because every dollar that we have to invest in supporting payments is $1 we can invest into what is our business proposition, which is low price. So every dollar that I have to spend on payments, I have to charge $1 to our customer. So it prevents us. Other merchants, I would say, who are not focused on lower price, that keeps them from their costs. It's $1 they have to put on payments, is $1 less they do in R&D, $1 less they do from servicing their customers. So that's one of the reasons why we really do focus on the cost of payments, is because it keeps us from doing what we really want to do, which is serving our customers with a low price every day. But now as we're moving more towards digital, I'd say those three things still exist. But what I see happening in the future is payments. Payments is definitely going to be an enabler. You have to have payments to monetize the transaction, but it needs to become seamless. It becomes even with less friction than it has today. One that is an afterthought, and it's very easy for the customer to do and for the merchant to accept.
Cathy, why don't you?
Yeah, so the way we think about the payments experience is really through the eyes of our customers, so small businesses, and then obviously their customers too. And we think about it in three stages. One is, what is the experience actually getting started as a new business accepting card payments? And that is something that historically has had a ton of friction in that process. The second piece is the actual transactional experience, you as a seller and interfacing with your buyer, which I think is what everyone usually hones in on. And then third, after the transaction, is actually the merchant's experience of actually settling and being paid out for those. So that's how we think about the experience. And as I said, I think there's some obvious friction in each part of that journey. And I think at Square, we see ourselves as adding value by eliminating that friction and making it more accessible, easier to use, and a faster experience.
Great. Andre?
Yeah, so very much like Square, our focus is in two main areas. So on the merchant and the customer, the end consumer experience with payments. So with respect to the merchant, we want to basically abstract all that complexity around being able to accept payments. So if I'm a small entrepreneur and I want to start up my online store selling widgets, I don't know about the complexities of card payments. So you'll sign up for Shopify, we'll automatically provision you a Shopify payments account, and you could be literally up and running in minutes. So we were one of the first to offer that streamlined onboarding flow, which is now sort of common across the industry. So it's enabling payments, and if Shopify payments is not one of those is not available to you, then you can use any one of the other 200 plus payment gateways that are available on the platform. So that's from the merchant perspective. From the consumer perspective, we're extremely sensitive to the payment experience at checkout. So we release to production 50 times a day, and every single thing we do on our checkout page is closely monitored, closely experimented, just to make sure that we're not negatively impacting our conversion rates. So we're extremely focused on improving that experience, which is why we're also on board with things like Apple Pay for the web and Android Pay. So I think when Apple Pay for the web came out, we were extremely on board with it, and it's funny because if you read all the payments magazines, they tend to say that it's not quite a success, but for us, we saw conversion rates of 2 times higher for customers that had Apple Pay for the web enabled. So all this to say, we're extremely focused on improving or essentially eliminating checkout for our customers as much as possible.
Great, thank you. So that's the context that kind of sets up both our panelists and the industry and some of the ways that they view user experience. So we're going to talk now, we'll open up more generally to talk about the industry. And so I'm going to start with something that I'm uncertain or that I don't really understand, and maybe you guys can start to talk about. When we look at the industry, there's lots of stuff we see about innovation and new services, and we see surveys and data that tells us that people want more, better, faster, and more convenient and more embedded. And there's lots of value-added things that can and should be done and are being done. And then we also hear that it's got to be cheaper, that it costs a lot to get it done, that it inhibits the friction is expensive, and that causes concerns. Doing new innovative things costs money, lowering the cost of payments takes money out of the system. How do those things reconcile? You've got a cost problem, you have an innovation problem. How does that all play out?
Yeah, I mean, we're largely focused on innovation and growth right now, but I mean, costs do come into play. So, for a small entrepreneur starting out, the cost of accepting card payments can be can be you know, a little challenging, to say the least. So, for example, you know, multi-location fees for small merchants that do low volume disproportionately affects those merchants, and it's not quite fair. You know, we do whatever we can to help those merchants, you know, succeed. And then sort of further on down the line, in terms of, you know, who's going to pay for those types of services, well, I think you mentioned it. The value-added services and the differentiation is really where it's key. So we've seen some of our merchants who were running their stores on Shopify who were not using Shopify payments, as an example, because they had better rates elsewhere. But they've moved back because by switching back, they can also take advantage of things like Shopify Capital or some of our machine learning risk algorithms that help them reduce fraud on the platform. So there's definitely, and they're willing to pay a little bit more for card processing in order to have that value-added service.
I would also add, I don't necessarily think that innovation and cost are at odds with each other. What Square has done historically has been innovation around things like very affordable or free-to-use hardware, point-of-sale software that can be accessible on a device that a small business already owns, like a phone or an iPad, innovation in how we approach onboarding and risk management to actually open up entirely new segments of the market that were underserved before because no one was able to serve them cost effectively. So by investing in innovation, you can actually lower the cost and increase the entire sort of pie of the card payments industry.
Yeah, I feel a little bit differently. I'll have to say, I think the number one friction point in the Canadian payment system, and it's also in a lot of the other countries' payment system, is interchange. Interchange is the number one friction point because it is such an expensive and proposition for merchants that I said it impacts the rest of their overall broader business strategy. But I think there's other impacts of interchange as well that really don't get as much attention. I really do think that interchange is holding back innovation as well. We talk about payment innovation and when it's coming, and it's coming in the future. I can tell you right now, payment innovation is already occurring in other markets in the world. The biggest market in the world that's having payment innovation right now is China. China has addressed interchange a decade ago. It's not even a problem. But in stores in China, merchants are seeing mobile wallet penetration over 50% of their sales. Over 50% of their sales. That's innovation that's happening right now. I do agree with the speaker earlier today, said the next round of payment innovation is going to come from Europe. I agree with that. I think PSD2 is going to change, it's going to change everything. And one of the things that's going to change is it's also, they've already addressed the interchange problem. What happened is interchange makes banks make poor decisions from an investment perspective. If you go back and look at the history of payments, when credit cards came out, it was a physical piece of plastic that we used to make a transaction inside of a store. That makes sense. You need a physical piece of plastic for that. Then when the internet first came out, they took a physical piece of plastic and tried to bend it a little and stuff it in the internet. And so what they did is they took that 16-digit number, and now you use that for online. Now, as we're going on to apps, how can we continue to put cards and use that in the process? You don't need to keep shoehorning this old peg for new payment innovation. If you want to see new payment innovation, PSD2 in Europe is going to be an innovative product. What Alipay and WeChat Pay are doing in China is already an innovative product. That's where the future is going to be. And I'll tell you, one of the things from a payments perspective that we've learned from Apple Pay and Google Wallet is a payments app in and of itself isn't enough. Customers want more than just payments. Payments is a table stake, but those solutions aren't solving a problem. Today, customers have a card that works just as well as the Apple phone. What can you do differently to give the customers more value that's going to get them to stick and continue to use that? That's what you're already seeing in China. The mobile wallets that built up in China started around social media. And you have people who are able to send money back and forth, P2P payments, and suddenly they have all this stored value on their phones, on their apps. What are they going to do with that? Now they want to start monetizing that money and they have merchants accepting it. So it's so much more opportunity than just payments. Payments is going to happen, but we need to make it as frictionless as possible. But again, we can't even begin any of that innovation until we address the interchange problem. And again, interchange, I'll say it, interchange should be zero. Interchange should be zero. There's no need for interchange. I mean, we've got the best example in the world right here in Canada. Interac has built the most secure payments network in the world with zero interchange. With zero interchange. So you don't need interchange.
It's compelling. It's compelling.
It is.
What else? Yeah.
I do want to say, I think for our merchants, interchange isn't a problem that they think about. Like, they don't even get to thinking about interchange. The majority of customers we serve, the biggest friction is actually getting into the system in the first place. So if you think about you starting out as a new business with no track record, the application forms, the background checks, the terminal expenses, everything you need to do to actually get on board and be able to accept card payments, there's so much friction there that, like, thinking about interchange is frankly a luxury. In Canada, roughly 70% of merchants who sign up for Square are entirely new to card payments. So this is a ton of people who are converting from being cash or cash and check only, and there is so much opportunity still there on the table that the interchange piece comes after that.
I'll make one more point since you brought up interchange. So, I think since she decided to talk about it. This is, I mean, it's a fact. I was talking to somebody yesterday about it, and it just kind of blows your mind. And think about this for a second. When someone comes into one of our stores and buys a big screen TV or buys a gaming console, and they pay with their credit card, the bank makes more on that transaction than we do. Wow. Think about that. The margin on the credit card is bigger than the margin for the merchant. And we went overseas and got the television, shipped it to the country, got it from the port into the store, put it up on the shelf, had it processed through the front, and the bank made more for saying, there's open to buy, there's enough open to buy. There's something fundamentally wrong there. There's something fundamentally wrong.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I mean, basically...
and you're in the middle, so it's kind of like...
I mean, from a new merchant onboarding perspective, I agree with Cathy in the sense that, you know, merchants don't know about all this complexity, so we've really abstracted that. So any reduction in interchange, and yes, you know, we talk to our acquiring banks and we put the screws to them from time to time, but any savings in interchange we would ultimately pass on to our merchants. There's the other aspect to Shopify in terms of the monthly recurring revenue that we have, or the subscriptions for people using the platform. A lot of those payments, they pay their monthly subscriptions through credit cards. So for us, it's a can't quite disclose the number, but it's a very large number in terms of their monthly payments that go through credit cards, and thus we're severely impacted by that, you know, interchange rate.
So it sounds like in terms of the way you have emerged in the market is you're solving the problem of access and the friction of getting access to a credit card and a merchant being able to take it, or doing it online, or doing it at a merchant level, and you're trying to solve the problem of cost. What other problems are out there that you see as next problems to solve?
I think complexity, as we've been talking about, is a huge thing, especially for small businesses. So it's not just understanding what fees you're paying, but being able to think about like PCI compliance and fraud detection and chargeback procedures and all of that. And that is something that we offer today as a service, as you said, abstracting away the complexity and providing that buffer so that we offer something that's very simple, transparent, and straightforward to our customers. I think the other one is around speed and access. So I think everybody likes speed, particularly when cash money is involved. I hear lots of small businesses say cash is king, or cash flow is king, and being able to have working capital fast is a really important thing. So at Square, we do things like next business day settlement to our merchants, and that's something that we will continue to innovate on around being faster for that, and hopefully the payments infrastructure will enable us to continue to do that sort of thing.
We're, I guess, more focused on the end customer experience around payments and the challenges there, because, you know, card abandonment rates are still at around 69%. Last year, $260 billion worth can be attributed to card abandonment in the US and Europe alone. So that's still a problem. So we're definitely investing whatever we can in that area. So things like I said, Apple Pay for the web and Android Pay on Chrome Mobile, and those are great, but it's not enough. So last year, Shopify became a member of the W3C, and we're helping steer the Web Payments Working Group to develop the new payment request API, which has gone to call for consensus now, and that's working quite well. And the next phase of that is now opening up that ecosystem to payment apps, so that all these other payment providers can now embed their apps in this payment request ecosystem. So I think that is also going to help lower that abandonment rate. But that's not enough. We also launched our own Shopify Pay a month ago, and we see that as a way of enabling customers. So now for the first time, a customer can shop online on a Shopify store, and I'm willing to bet that most people probably don't know who Shopify is, but I'm willing to bet that probably almost everybody in this room has been on a Shopify store or bought something from a Shopify store at one point in the past year without knowing it. So now with Shopify Pay, you can now, they enter their checkout details on their first payment, they opt in, and then now across the entire platform, so all 400,000 plus merchants, you can now check out with one click across Shopify merchants. So we see these as all being complementary, but it's still with the intent of trying to get that abandonment rate down to essentially zero if we can. So.
Yeah, we're doing some pretty innovative things around the world from a payments perspective, and like I said earlier, it has to be more than just the payment transaction piece. So I can tell you about a couple things that are on the market that we've already put out there. I can tell you about some other things I can't tell you about, but I'll tell you what's out in the market today. In the U.S. today, we've launched a product called Walmart Pay, and what Walmart Pay is, it's basically a QR code-based product. Customers are able to load their payment credentials onto Walmart.com, and they're stored on Walmart.com. Then when you go to the store, you're able to use a QR code to basically access your payment credentials and to complete the transaction inside the store. Again, that's just a payment piece, pretty cut and dry. What happens on the back end, we're then able to give you a receipt in an electronic format. That also, you have that, you can store it a lot easier from that perspective. But we also have a program called Savings Catcher in the US, and everything in your purchase that day is automatically loaded into the Savings Catcher program. And what that does is it looks at everything you bought that day, and it looks at all of our competitors in your area, looks at all their flyers, and if we're able to find anything you bought at our competitors, the other competitors say is cheaper, we'll give you the difference on a Walmart gift card, automatically. So you find out in about 3 days, you make your purchase, your receipt's already part of Savings Catcher. Within 3 days, you'll get a note saying, hey, our price is one, we won on everything. Or we found this cheaper, here's 75 cents, here's $4, depending on how much you bought. And again, it goes onto a Walmart gift card that you can then use on your next purchase. Next time you come in and use Walmart Pay, it's gonna take $4 off because it's gonna pull that gift card amount off first, off your bill. So that's one example of something that we're doing to make the customer's checkout experience better, to make it more than just payments. Another thing that we've been doing at our Sam's Club in the US is we've created an application called Scan and Go. And so what happens is, and so Sam's Club is like a Costco that you guys have here. So basically when you go into the club, as you're going around the club, you're scanning your items as you go around the club into the app. Then when you go up to the queue, you hit pay, you swipe, and you walk out the door. You don't have to go through the cashier at the front. You completely avoid the queue at the front. As you exit the door, they have someone with a computer, a little handheld, who scans the barcode that displays on your phone. They do a quick count through your basket, and then off you go. We have seen a huge adoption of that from our customers. A very positive response from our customers as far as speeding up their transaction process. And one of the things that we're seeing, it actually drives more visits into our clubs as customers are coming in more frequently now because they're able to get in and out of the store much faster. So again, where I see this going is it's got to be more than just payments. It's got to be real value to the customer as well.
So complexity, abandonment rates, fear of missing out. Good things to solve. So when we now look at, we're hearing things about blockchain and digital ledger technology and cryptocurrencies and micropayments and other ways around some of this. When you look at all of those things, are those risks to your business? Are they opportunities in your business? Where do you see the fundamental changes that may help you or also hurt you? Maybe you don't want to disclose too much of that, but where do you see those things fitting in, and how does that change the dynamic of your business?
I think the biggest opportunity and something we're pretty excited about at Square right now is data science and machine learning. So that's something that we are investing heavily in. Historically, it's been used in a lot of our risk management procedures, but we're starting to think more holistically about how we can apply that to every single part of the business and the payments experience to deliver not only better risk controls and therefore lower cost and more financial inclusion and accessibility, but also a more delightful customer experience. And then I think new sort of payment form factors. Square's goal is always to accept every form of payment. So these are all things that we will look to incorporate into our ecosystem as they emerge in different markets. So mostly opportunity.
I think we're excited about some of the work being done in blockchain and what that can do for cross-border payments and some of the payout aspects of that to our merchants as well. I guess more importantly, I think we're also keeping a close eye on a lot of the voice first, voice commerce aspects to things that are coming out. So, you know, Alexa, Google Home, and you know, probably in a couple of weeks at WWDC, you'll see Apple will probably announce their equivalent. And the interaction that people have with these. So right now, you know, they're controlling things like our lights and our thermostats in our homes, but it's going to be the way that you're going to be interacting with your favorite brands. And we're already seeing it with Alexa and Amazon. So I think a lot of that is voice first, not voice only. So you know, you're not going to be able to use your voice in every scenario. You know, if you're holding a small baby at home, a sleeping baby at home, you're not going to want to use your voice to turn off the lights, right? So, but there are definitely a lot of opportunities there.
I'd say we certainly see a lot of innovations coming down the pipe all over the world. Honestly, innovation's happening faster than it ever has before. And one of the challenge from a merchant perspective, and I mean, we're a large merchant. Smaller merchants have this same impact. Is we can't invest in every new technology that comes along. Because again, the market's going to change, and by the time we get the project done, it's going to be obsolete. And so we're having to make very big calculated decisions on where we're going to put investment from a payment perspective. And so that typically means we need to wait to see some scale in the marketplace before we decide to make an investment in it and start to adopt it. But also then once it has reached a certain level of scale, do we want to go ahead and invest in it now or then invest in the thing that's going to leapfrog it? So it's the challenge is, especially for larger merchants, is our development cycles are so long as far as what we do from a technology and IT perspective. We have to be thinking pretty far down the road and can only make a few bets. We can't start everything that's in the marketplace.
One thing I noticed none of you mentioned is how a real-time rail will change the dynamic for you in the marketplace and some of the impacts of the modernization activities that we're doing, we're talking about here. Have you given any thought to that and what that might do?
We love the real-time rail. I mean, I think it's, we're very excited about what it could potentially be, opportunity to get our funds in faster, opportunity to avoid interchange, opportunity to, any additional networks that it gives competition, we're very supportive of it. Like I said earlier, the PSD2 coming out of Europe, we're very, very excited to see where that leads.
Yeah, for us, real-time rail, I mean, the biggest impact would be on the payout times to our merchants, getting them access to their funds. And again, they're small to medium-sized businesses. They need their money quickly because they want to invest that money back into their business. So I think definitely a real-time rail there would be important.
When you look at the industry overall, and then we'll go to questions in a minute if there's anybody here, feel free to come up. When you look at the industry overall, considering FIs, financial institutions, as well as large technology companies and smaller technology companies, big retailers, and you see the dynamics of the changing, who do you see as the winners and losers in the longer term? Like we may see who's doing what shifting and balancing in the world of payments. What do you see the sort of who will kind of disappear and who will emerge stronger at the end of large-scale change?
I think PSPs have often complained that they're sort of stuck at the bottom of the funnel in terms of that whole payment and checkout experience, right? You know, the merchants own a lot of that data. The merchants might have to use other providers for risk or you name it. And then there's that payments piece that happens at the end. And a lot of them sort of complain about that's where they're stuck and they can't quite break out of there, and they're trying, by offering these value-added services. I think the winners are going to be the ones that find a way to, and it sounds a little cliche, I know, but like innovate with and stay on top of some of these emerging technologies, so voice commerce or blockchain, and be able to find ways to add value to those systems as well. So not necessarily inserting themselves into those systems, because that usually leads to a shitty UX experience, but like more, adding value to, or sort of breaking out of their funnel and trying to find another way into that pipeline.
I think, as a lot of people have been saying today and yesterday, it's an ecosystem. Like no one operates in a vacuum, and there's a lot of collaboration going on. And the ability to open up that ecosystem and serve an even larger portion of businesses, I think that the winners will be people who help enable that.
I think, again, from a merchant perspective, I think merchants are always going to need payments. We need to get our money. So we're going to, I think merchant can possibly differentiate themselves, making the customer experience from a payment perspective very frictionless. And so I think there may be a temporary advantage for those merchants who are able to create a frictionless environment for consumers, but I think there'll be a quick migration there over time as other merchants start to emulate them. From an overall payment system, I think the banks are always going to have the cash, merchants are always going to have the customers to try to sell things. Who's going to be in the middle and who's going to win? I would say I think the folks who are able to do it from the most efficient perspective, I would say again from a low cost perspective, but then also offer value services on top of that. I think for a lot of the smaller merchants, I think the services that Square and Shopify provide are, I can't even tell you, I think they're very, very valuable as far as back-end accounting and doing a lot of back-end reconciliation and handling chargeback processing and everything like that. Incredibly complex for someone who's just trying to operate a one-stop shop. So I think there's a real opportunity for them to differentiate themselves there. But I think for the other folks in the network, it's all about efficiency and delivering additional value.
You touched on earlier, and you've each done a little bit, all three of your organizations work internationally. What are the things you're seeing internationally that surprise you, that you are confident are coming here? You've mentioned a little bit. Where do you see that dynamic changing?
I mean, from our perspective, Canada is one of the most advanced markets in terms of EMV and card payments. So it's less what's coming to Canada, but more how...
What we're taking to them, to the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think just consumer behavior and trends are very different in our different markets. So we're available in Canada, the US, Australia, Japan, and as of a couple of months ago, the UK. And just the differences in how consumers think around tapping cards, approaches to tipping, which is very different outside of North America, and then the Japanese culture, which is still very cash heavy. Very different dynamics we see everywhere.
Yeah, and I think it's the magic is in figuring out these other markets. So, for example, in Europe, a lot of these redirect-based payment methods are the norm, right? Ideal in Netherlands and GiroPay, and where something like that, we have Interac Online, which had early good adoption. I'm not sure what the numbers are like now, but probably nowhere near the same as ideal, where it's pretty much the only way to pay online. So other markets like Japan, same thing, Konbini, where you walk to the store and provide cash and get a voucher code. Those types of markets are certainly interesting, and obviously companies like ours have to adapt to that way of paying.
I think payment innovation in a market really depends on the realities of a specific market. For example, in some of the markets in Latin America, if you're able to order something online, then go in the store and pay cash and pick it up, that's a payment innovation. I would say that's something that's not needed here in Canada for sure. It's more of a problem for some of the more developing markets. But I think, again, one of the places you can look to see where the future of retail is coming from. I already talked about PSD2 coming, but I think another place is China. China, again, is an absolutely incredible market, and it's growing so quickly. Again, over the last 2 years, you've seen mobile payments go from 0 to over 50% of purchases at some merchants. And part of that as well is the changing dynamics that you're seeing in the customer base. One of the things that we see in our stores in China, we have over 20,000 SKUs, 20,000 items at our stores in China that you can go onto your app and order. and we'll have it delivered to your house in 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, what you order on your app will be at your front door. And the Chinese customer base, they're used to getting 6 to 7 home deliveries every single day. That's what the customer base is used to. And so just if you start to think about what, and again, that works in a market that's very dense, that has tens of millions of people in a pretty tight area, but that's the potential future of what the market could look like, and what kind of payment infrastructure you need to support that. They're not going out and buying groceries for a week. They're buying dinner right now. They're buying the ingredients they need for dinner right now and having it at their door in 30 minutes. And it's just a really we talk about the dynamics that are happening in the payments industry, which are incredible, but there's also there are dynamics that are happening in the overall consumer industry and retail industry. So there's a lot of things changing in the world all at the same time, and it'll be very interesting to see where it all lands.
If we're successful at driving down the cost and making it more seamless, taking out complexity, doing a lot of those things, what is the Nirvana of consumer experience or buyer experience in the future? I don't know how far out, but like what does it look like? What does it look like in the end?
I'll tell you, I think the big innovation, we kind of talk about it now and everybody's talking about it, but no one's really doing it yet. It's big data. And I think, I'll say it again, I think interchange is one of the problems that's holding back big data, because merchants are having to pay so much for this, for just access to the payments rails. They're protecting their SKU level data, they're protecting the sales data so aggressively that if they weren't having to cover the cost of just the payments, they'd be willing to look for more collaboration of a payment scheme. So what kind of things are customers buying that we can now offer complementary services? Where are they shopping? What's their credit profile look like? What ways can we start to collaborate? So I think the next innovation and the next Nirvana is going to be around big data, but I think that's probably 5 to 7 years away before we really start to get meaningful traction.
How does the consumer benefit from the big data? So like, what's the prize of the buyer?
From a consumer perspective, it's a more personalized experience. So instead of walking into I'll use a big box for example. Instead of walking to a store that has 300,000 items, when you come in, I know on your last 10 trips you bought these 15 items. So so I can give you I know what you bought, and so I can tell you exactly where it is. Or if you said, hey, I'm coming in on Thursday, when you come in, there's your basket, there's the 15 items that you bought last time, already ready for you. You can pull some out, walk around, add some more things in. So I think that's part of it. They could also look for trends of what you're buying in other places. I see that you're shopping at a lot at baby stores. So hey, have you seen our baby selection? So I think there's just an opportunity to give customers a more personal experience and a more relevant experience.
Is that a little creepy?
We've all seen Minority Report. I mean, I certainly think you start
I'm not so sure that's a win yet.
You feel it's a little bit creepy, but
will we ever be able to go in your stores and just kind of fill our basket and just walk out to our car and it all just gets paid and we don't have to worry about it?
I mean, today you're able to. You don't have to get out of the car. You can go online, say what you want, pull up. They put it in the back. You don't even get out of your car. They'll put it in the back of your car and you drive home, or you can have something delivered to your house. So I definitely see that coming.
And for biometrics and ease, like what about you guys? What do you see as for your merchants, what would you enable them to be able to do for their customers?
Yeah, so I think for us the Nirvana is, and I'm not exactly sure what the specific form factor would be in the future, but the Nirvana is that the payments experience, that transactional experience melts into the background so the buyer and seller can really focus on that relationship. And then I think the other thing is how do we get small businesses to continue to have access to similar kinds of tools and technologies that have historically been the purview of large businesses. So how do we get big data and those kinds of insights and capabilities into the hands of the very smallest merchants in order to continue to level the playing field? So how can we make sure that they know about their customers, their analytics, what's selling, predictive, what you want in your coffee in the morning and all that kind of stuff.
So almost every small merchant being able to do the kinds of things that a Walmart would do. Do you have anything else on that?
That's exactly it. I mean, basically enabling features like that on a platform so small to medium-sized businesses can act like large businesses. So just to touch on the machine learning and the big data aspect, we've seen that with things like conversational commerce, where you're interacting with chatbots with various stores. where you contact a store over Facebook Messenger, and they say, oh well, we know you've been shopping for blue dresses. Here are some blue dresses, and you can completely complete that purchase. You can complete that purchase right there within your Messenger chat, the whole interaction with that store and the shopping experience was sort of guided through machine learning and AI, and ultimately it's just a one-click checkout, or the checkout is sort of dissolved into the background, like Cathy said.
Do you see anything around micropayments? Does it start to become like buying books by the page and movies by the scenes and music or whatever? Things like that?
I think once you address the cost issue, I think micropayments become a lot easier,
right.
a lot easier to do. I don't know if we'll ever get to a single page or a single scene, but I think cost is probably one of the big problems with micropayments today.
Okay. Now you guys are in sort of different businesses. You started in different places, but your businesses look like they're going to similar places. How does that work? Does everybody see the same opportunity and everybody ends up there and you all end up competing and that's a good market force? Or do you end up getting down there and having to differentiate and find things like, what do you worry about with two very successful companies ending up in the same place? Or do you?
So Square, I think, is best known for the offline or the point of sale experience and has expanded into e-commerce channels. And obviously Shopify has come from the opposite direction. Square, we really think about the value that we deliver to our customers, and we will continue to innovate on that. I think competition and innovation and the ability to serve small businesses, they are such an underserved segment of the market. I'll keep going on about this, but there are so many businesses here in Canada today who are still cash only and can't get onto the system. Having more options and more providers can only be a good thing for the industry and for the economy overall.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Shopify we started off as basically an online store builder 10 years ago, but since migrated to be multi-channel. But merchants these days are a lot wiser, a lot smarter, and they know they need more than fancy dongle or whatever. And Square's realized that too. They're moving into the e-commerce space and offering more services, and Shopify is doing the same in terms of simplifying the entire experience for small businesses so that they can focus on running their business and not having to deal with the complexities around payments, shipping, multi-location inventory, and all that sort of stuff. So really we want these small to medium-sized businesses to focus on building their business.
So we've got about 5, maybe a little bit less minutes. Why don't I just open up and you can each have your say. I don't know what it is you want to say, but you don't even have to toe a line or anything. You can just have your say. We'll just start here and we'll go across.
Wow. So I would say interchange. So in case you haven't heard it yet. So yeah, again,
we'll just stop there. Okay.
that might, and actually let me put the last word in too. So yeah, I really do think that Canada needs to decide as a country where it wants to go from an innovation perspective. I think Europe did a great thing a couple of years ago when they went through and actually regulated all the interchange fees. We see PSD2 coming, and I think that's great. I think Canada has the opportunity now, as they're looking at what they're going to do from an interchange perspective, to go as far as Europe has, or to go even farther and be a world leader. I think interchange needs to be zero. I think if you take interchange down to zero in the market for Canada, I think you will be amazed at the level of innovation that happens here, but also the number of folks who are going to come internationally to Canada as well to do investments and do deals here.
I just want to circle back to some of the work that the W3C is doing. I think that short-term, medium-term is going to be significant. If you saw Google I/O last week, you saw Alipay has already embedded themselves as a payment app within that ecosystem, so it's already starting. I think that's going to be very significant.
And for us, the payments experience is really just the core of what we do, and there is a ton of opportunity to add value, even to the payment experience today, let alone all the innovation that's coming down the road, by making payments more accessible, simpler to use, and easier to access for small businesses, which make up the sort of backbone of the Canadian economy.
Thank you. So as I'm contemplating a summary thought, I'm wondering what might Mario want to say is his number one thing. So I mean, we've heard a number of things around ease of access, reducing complexity, making it available to the small business. The cost of doing payments is a major friction, but that it's ultimately the consumer's experience and the merchant's experience that we have to be supporting them to make it easier, affordable, so that they can be innovating in their business and that we can be innovating and beneath that and giving them the tools they need to be successful, sort of helping them to grow. So thank you for that. Thank you for your time, and thank you for coming, and we'll look forward to seeing you through the conference. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.